Hi guys, welcome to Think IoT. In the last session, we discussed about how to create an object for the class and how to access the members of a class. In this session, we are going to discuss about constructor, class variables and class methods. So, what is a constructor? So, in simple terms to understand, constructor is a special method which is used to initialize the members of a class when an instance is created, that is when the object is created. So as soon as the object is created, object will have some default value. That means the member variables of an object will have some default values. Let us see in a programmatical way. So let's define a class test, and the constructor will be defined by underscore underscore init underscore. Let's define it underscore init underscore of self. Let's in constructor. Let's create an object for the class. So let's run the program. So we created an instance for the class test. We see the constructor call automatically. So let's create some instance variables. Self.I is equal to 10 and self.j is equal to 20. And I want to display this. Let's write another function sum. Here I and j values I am printing. Self.I self.j, and let's call the method sum. We see the values of I and j. I want the sum of the instance variables I and j. Let's create another variable as self.I plus self.j. Let's print yes no. You see the sum of the two instance variables is stored in a variable s. So now let's create another instance for the class test. T2 is equal to test and T2 dot sum. So instead of giving the default values here in the constructor, let's give in the object creation itself. Let's give 100 comma 200 and here 111 comma 222. So as we are passing the values in the during the object creation, so I am giving the arguments here. Let's say a comma b. So instead of default values I am giving a here and b. Now see how it works. You see, for the object T1 the sum of two instance variable is 300, and for the object 2, for the instance 2, the sum of two instance variable is 333. So this is how the constructor works, and now we will discuss about class variables. So class variables are the variables which are shared among all the instances of the class, whereas instance variables are unique to the object only. You see here the I and j values for the each instance is different. For this instance 100 and 200, for this instance is 111 and 222. But when it comes to the class variables, this will be shared among all the class objects, that is instances. So class variable will be declared uh, above all the methods. Let's say you have the variable x is equal to 20. So let's say you want to do incrementation on the class variable. So instead of this, let's say you have a and instead of this function, I want to do some incrementation. So here I am adding, let's say 100 to the x. Let's call this t1 dot increment and print that x. See, you get some error. So let's call the increment function. So we see the x value is 120. So let's print here the class variable. Print of test dot y test dot x. Let's run the, you see, even after you made an incrementation on the class variable, the value is still 20. Why? Because you made an incrementation on instance variable. Here first, whenever you are sending self.x, means it checks the value of x in the instance methods. So it's not present in the instance method. Then it goes to the class level. So it checks whether any class variable is present or not. So class variable is present. So it fetches the value here. So when it comes to assigning, it checks the instance variable in the instance method. So it's not present. Then it creates a instance variable self.x and assign the value 100 plus the 20 is assigned. So that's why we are getting 120 here. But when it comes to the class level, we are seeing only 20. So to reflect the incrementation in class variable, what we have to do is, instead of self, you have to give the class name test. Now you see it's reflected in the class variable. You can access the class variable either by instance of the class self or by using a class name test.x. But when it comes to the modification, you must use class name to make changes in the class variable. So this must be noted. So this is about a class variable. Let's come to a class method. So class method is a method which can access only class variables. Let's create a class method. So how we define a class method? So class method will be defined by the decorator class method. So let's define a method called object count. So I'm giving the reference. So let's take one more class variable, counter. So I want to count how many instances the class have, how many objects created for the class. So what I do is I created a counter class variable. Let's take the counter value equal to test dot counter plus 1. So in the class method I just return class dot counter. So I want to print how many objects are created for the class. Let's print count. So class name dot method obj underscore count. Now let's run the program. You see, we have only one instance of the class. Let's create another instance. So you see, now it's saying that we have two instances. So in this way, the class method will be used to access the class variables. Here I'm taking some class variable counter and incrementing in a constructor. So for every instance the constructor gets called and it gets incremented. So as we already discussed, the class variable will be shared among all the instances. So for every instance this gets called and this will be incremented. So whenever we call the object count, so we see the count of the object, we count of the instances created. So this is how the class method works. Thank you.